Hey guys, Ricky here with another editing tutorial. I get a lot of questions about shooting in RAW versus JPEG and really understanding the differences in the file and the quality and whether or not one makes a difference over the other. Here on the left you can see I have a JPEG version of the RAW file, exactly the same. The settings are the same. This was shot on my Nikon D700 with a 35mm with a macro filter over the top. And I will show you how big of a difference, some are more subtle than others, but some of the bigger differences between JPEG versus RAW. So I'm going to try to keep all of these settings exactly the same, and I'll copy and paste some just so you can kind of see the end result. But let's just try auto sliders here, just for basic understanding of the difference. You will see that the RAW file, it does say it's a DNG, and it's because I import all of my RAW files and have them converted to a DNG when they go into Lightroom, just so that my information file, the EXIF data, and the photo file are merged. It does change the file size a tiny bit, but there's no loss of quality, and it is still a RAW image, so no harm done. Okay, so let's go through here of all this and just make some adjustments based on what I would normally do for a photo. So I always amp up that clarity just a tiny bit. I don't adjust the color unless I really feel it needs to get done. Let's go down to lens corrections. And here, especially because I am using a macro filter on this lens for this photo, you will notice the biggest difference. On the JPEG here, it says that it's unable to locate a matching profile automatically, and that's because I'm using the macro filter over my 35mm lens, so it won't take out that lens distortion. But if we look over here at the RAW file, it does still have some information for lens distortion that's on the lens in shooting in my camera. So that's kind of the biggest difference just right off the bat, besides like color and light, or the white balance and light that you can see right away. So here's RAW on the left, JPEG on the right. And if you're still not sold, just some other basic understandings of RAW versus JPEG is that RAW captures all of the image data from the camera sensor when you take the picture. There's no compression like there's with JPEG. Here you can see, there is a lot of compression, and you can notice it in some of the less detailed areas compared to the RAW. Like there's virtually no noise here. I'm shooting ISO 400, so it's, there's virtually no grain. So the fact that there's quite a bit more noise and quality reduction and compression here, that's definitely a notable difference. Let's go down to the split toning panel, and I typically do this for every photo. I like my images to be a little warmer, so I've just learned consistently that having my highlights more toward the right and my shadows more toward the left give me a result that I tend to really like. Here we're on the JPEG file, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm not going to be quite as concerned with numbers. Well, usually I'm not as concerned, but for the sake of this example, let's make them both the same. 300, 5, let's do 60 and 5. I was very, very close. JPEG, RAW. The white balance, that always kind of gets me. You can see I do shoot Kelvin, so I do keep it on the warmer end of the number scale. And so while I like it warmer, I don't want to take away from the actual color that's present in the photos. Like these flowers are a very pale pink with a yellowing white undertone. And you can see the range of colors here is quite a bit different than the range of color right here. And that just all goes down to the quality of image that's gathered from RAW versus JPEG. Another option I would love to show you here is in the tone curve. If you just select this little box right here, you can adjust the scale on your own. And one of the basic settings most photographers will do if they mess with the tone curve on their own is just making an S. They call this the S curve. A very basic adjustment here, and you add the extra points here. Like you can just get away with the one up here, and this is just really quick. So just put 1 point up here, but put an extra 1 or 2 over here so that you can adjust that intensity of contrast that you would get otherwise. Unless that's what you're going for, then go for it. And so if we were just going to quickly do that same thing over here, in a lower light photo, that's something that you want to know how to make adjustments for, is in the tone curve, to kind of keep it from being too intense and dark. I tend to like a softer photo, a softer contrast a little bit, so I want it to just be very pleasing and restful to the eye, at least for a low light scenario. I think there's already a lot of contrast with light versus dark, and I want that to not be distracting in the photo. So you can kind of see, and let's just, for the sake of this, let's copy this with the tone curve and paste it so it is identical. And you can already see here, there's still quite a bit of noise and grain, and that's just in camera settings. You come here and it's much softer. I do want to take out some of the oranges just in the basic panel, because I feel like it's a little more intense than what I would like. Same for here. And then if you'll notice, here on the white balance on the scale, there's more of a measurement here. There's a number scale that tells you the temperature here in the blues is this specific number. Same for the tint, is plus this specific number. So it goes positive and then it goes negative. And it gives you a better measure of your temperature and your tint from this part of the color scale, or color sliders here. And then on a JPEG photo, it's not quite the same. There's a lot less range of information to play with. You're only given a more limited collection of color data, if you will. And the more you do it, the more sensitive your eye will become to the color change, to white balance, to the details and the highlights and things like that. So this is just at first glance. And just so you know, we're still doing the same. Now the colors are identical from one RAW file to the JPEG file. Like, I would be okay with this picture. This isn't what I would maybe have my final edit be. But like, this is okay. This isn't bad. And then this is the JPEG version, same edits. Now obviously I can go through and I could keep messing with this and make it less intense and look more like what I would want it to look like where we're at here with the RAW file. It's much softer. It's more pleasing to the eye. I think I would still maybe go through here and fix some of the color issues. Let's see what I have it on. -13, -7. So you can see, even with everything the same, even with minimal changes, you know, the JPEG is fine. It looks okay. But I would still vow to say that the RAW looks better. It's going to really be up to you what the visual difference is. But it's hard to ignore that RAW does shoot in higher quality. If there were ever a need to correct problems that are in the image or recover anything, especially if it's shot in JPEG, you just lose so much more data. It's not as recoverable. And you can't put information back into the sensor after you've already taken the shot, so you have to deal with what you already have. And that's really all you have. So we have RAW on the left, JPEG on the right, all the same settings, same shot, and you can see the difference. Now I do want to point out, like, the JPEG photo doesn't look bad. That's not the point here. The point is just to show you the difference in using the exact same settings time and again, and what that difference looks like as you're editing the photo. And so this, this is also a very narrow example. If we were doing a wide landscape or a portrait, you would probably see more differences, but I just wanted to show you in detail the light and the white balance difference, and how that looks overall. So I do hope that you found this helpful. I know that this is not a very dramatic example of RAW files versus JPEG files, but it really comes down to the quality and the information and your ability just to manipulate the photo, which is kind of the point of shooting in digital, is that you can manipulate the photo, you can edit it, and make it something that hopefully you want to print or share, or that does justice for your clients or whatever it is that you're shooting for.